Good morning, everyone. Lots going on today. And first, let's start on a dock. If they could do this on a dock, why can't they do this in the House of Commons? The House of Commons has very high ceilings. Can they not space out in the House of Commons? Have we not seen that? Do we not deserve leadership at the level of at least normal during this crisis? No. Instead, we will work less. We will adjourn until September, and we will hang out on a dock and show you just how much work your government is doing. Social distance kayaking. This morning, we were honored to host ministers Kath McKenna, Patty Haydu, Harjit Sajjan, Mona Fortier, and David Lametti. Where's David Lametti's Twitter? No David Lametti's Twitter? During these crazy times, there's nothing like a little social distancing R&R out on the water. Thanks for everything. Yeah, relaxation, R&R. Man, you guys are working hard. Hardly working, right? Yesterday, Donald Trump declared Antifa a terrorist organization. And I've had lots of people say, oh, Antifa isn't a centralized organization. And apparently, according to some leaked tweets and some deleted tweets and some interesting speculation, the rumor is that apparently there's been a 3-year-long infiltration. So they've mapped these groups. They've partaken in some of these operations, and they know who the leaders are, and they're going to, roll it out and deal with it. I suppose we'll know tonight, right? But who knows? It's very interesting. And I wanted to show you that Antifa or Black Bloc or whatever is in Canada. Here's a global news from 2017. Black Bloc warning urges more violence against Canadian journalists. An anti-fascist group whose members assaulted 2 global news journalists at a demonstration in Quebec last weekend defended their actions Thursday and threatened more violence against journalists covering future protests in order to, according to the Post, make demonstrations safer for the group. An anonymous statement posted online titled "No Face, No Case" in defense of smashing corporate media cameras, the group said it wanted to offer an explanation for why Global News camera was smashed and reporter Mike Armstrong was assaulted and pushed down a staircase. Quote, sometimes it is necessary to go against what the mainstream considers acceptable to break the law in order to do the ethical thing, the Post read. Those who mask up to fight the racist far right have decided at great personal risk that they will use any means necessary to shut down fascist organizing. Okay, so I just want you to understand these are rallying against the, quote, racist far right. And, well, the tactics they're saying is sometimes you have to break the law to do what's right. Is this what's right? Here's Montreal. The looting has begun in Montreal. It says Yakov Polak, and I guess this is a store in Montreal. And we're going to watch some rioters get out with some guitars. Here you go. Ooh. Justice, right? Justice. Yeah, damn the man. Save the Empire. Empire Records. But there was actual justice, apparently. It says the police found some guitars and arrested multiple people. So in Canada, I guess at least some police are doing something. Where were they here? I mean, this takes time to smash a window at a department store or wherever that is. I don't exactly know where that is. But is this what we're encouraging? It's interesting to see, and here's Aaron Gunn, and he put together a little thread. He says he's an advocate for taxpayers and common sense. 50 million plus views is strong, holding politicians to account. So he's somebody who comments kind of like me. I like this thread, so I'm going to read it. Up to you to make up your mind what you think about it. He says, very disappointed and quite frankly embarrassed to watch these left-wing protests turn violent in Montreal tonight. There is zero excuse for this kind of lawless behavior in a free democratic country like Canada. Let's not forget, and this was posted at 1:48 a.m. on June 1st. Let's not forget, 1, the incident spawning these protests did not happen in Canada, has no connection to Canada, and is related to the remnants of an underlying social framework, slavery, that is not part of Canada's history. Remember, I'm interjecting here. Canada was the destination for the Underground Railroad. Black slaves were safe in Canada, right? So shoehorning in people are racist is shoehorning it in, rewriting history. Okay, back to the tweet thread. 2, all officers involved have been fired and the perpetrator arrested and charged. If you're looking to protest a foreign country's justice system, there are better examples to choose from. Quote, or bracket, the country currently holding 2 Canadians hostage might be a good place to start. That's China, the 2 Michaels. 3, in case you hadn't noticed, there's a global pandemic underway of a highly infectious disease that has killed hundreds of thousands and shut down the economy. Maybe not the best time for a giant, uncoordinated mass gathering. I hope he's making this point tongue-in-cheek, but even if he believes it, like, yeah, if you want to play by those rules, why is the lockdown protest, and to be fair, they're not ticketing people at the anti-lockdown protests this week anyway that I saw, but they didn't ticket anyone at these protests. Are these going to result in upticks like Mother's Day, or is it going to take 2 to 3 months for the next second wave, the so-called second wave? And I'm going to cast doubt on that because I haven't seen it anywhere. Show me where the second wave is happening. Wuhan? We haven't seen that. They're open, right? Okay, back to this. 4, if you're looking for something to protest, thousands of Canadian seniors are dying in embarrassingly under-equipped old age homes with no place worse than Montreal. Good life advice to follow. Set your own house in order before criticizing the world. That's a Jordan Peterson quote for anybody who doesn't recognize it right away. I thought that was interesting, right? And moving into Canadian sports, because, we need our Canadian sports to comment on American political situations. The Randy Ambrose, the commissioner of the CFL, says, as we watch events unfold in the U.S. this weekend, the CFL has issued a statement condemning racism. It's also important to acknowledge that our country has its own problems with race, and our league's history is far from perfect, even if it's marked by many firsts for black athletes and coaches. You remember a backhanded comment or a backhanded compliment, like, even though you're slow, that wasn't that bad. It's a compliment, but it's not really a compliment. It's like, yes, it's marked. Our history is marred by terrible racism, and our specific history is not perfect, even if it's marked by all the great things we did. I mean, really. Anyway, back to this. I cannot pretend, coming from a place of privilege, to understand what it feels like for those whose lives are marked by the racism they must face every day. But I can stand with them, and I always will. Virtue signaling to the highest order. Whew. I can smell it from here, eh? Could you, like, jeepers creepers, sir. And here's the Leafs. The Leafs are getting in on this too. All of our collective hearts were broken as we watched the senseless murder of George Floyd, as well as the pain and frustration displayed in protests that followed across the globe. I don't know when exactly this was posted. It got linked to me this morning, but I don't know exactly when, because those were not protests. Those were rioters, and that was a coordinated event. Together, we need to do, in my opinion, we need to do more to not only speak out against racism when we witness it, but commit ourselves to anti-racist efforts in the long run to ensure its defeat once and for all. Change is needed, and as leaders in our sport and community, the Toronto Maple Leafs are deeply committed to doing our part to help eradicate all forms of bigotry and racism. Nope, no thanks. No thanks. Why, again, we can go back to Aaron Gunn's list here, but the incident spawning these protests, and the incident specifically noted by the George Floyd incident, is not a Canadian incident. And so saying, yeah, we're so racist, we're super, super racist, doesn't make any sense. Oh, right, we elected that guy. Racists. You're so right. They're so right. We're super racist. We're super racist. You know what, though? The most racist people, I think, in Canada, then, if we're going to go by that, are the Liberal cabinet ministers and the Liberal MPs who haven't called for a leadership review. Like, this guy's their leader. Racists. Those racists. And they have the gall. They have the gall to go on Twitter. A coordinated Twitter bomb. Everyone. And yeah, we're going to look at the bigotry of low expectations. But a coordinated Twitter bomb across all the cabinet ministers. And if you're not a cabinet minister, you're retweeting what a cabinet minister said. And if you are a cabinet minister, you're also retweeting what a cabinet minister said. And I think it's interesting. They all retweet this article too by the Raptors coach, right? You have to do better. You're all racists. Well, I mean, maybe they've got a point. Maybe they do. Those racists letting this guy stay as leader? What kind of crazy world do we live in? You know, talk down to the whole population and enthusiastically listen to this guy as the leader because he's super credible, right? I wonder how much that cost. Like, it was under his shirt too, right? Like, okay. So here's Justin Trudeau. Here's Barty Shagger. And she says, as Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said yesterday, anti-black racism is real. It's in the United States, but it's also in Canada. It's clear we have work to do here in Canada. And I call on all Canadians to be united in this endeavor. Okay. They're calling Canadians racist, but they're assuming you're going to think that they're talking about other Canadians, not you, those other racist Canadians who you need to call out. They're all encouraging. Even the sports guys are encouraging speaking up about, speak out against racism when we witness it, right? So we have to speak up, right? We have to speak up about it and join them and be an ally and stuff. That's what they're all saying. And same with Justin Trudeau, right? We have to speak up about it. We have to call it out. And this is a strange thing because they're running like CBC articles, how to talk to your in-laws about misinformation, and how to talk to your crazy uncle about misinformation, and how to shut that down on Facebook, and blah 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 blah. Like they're recruiting these people to fight their war for them with their crazy ideas inserted, shoehorned in to a history that doesn't exist, right? Like this racist history, this systemically racist history. At what point in history did we decide to be racist? After the Underground Railroad ended in Canada and we helped 30 to 40,000 black slaves become free? Or am I misunderstanding that history? So after we did that, then sometime between 1890s and the 1960s or so, we became super racist against blacks. Or was it in the 1960s under Pierre Elliott Trudeau that we decided to be racist against blacks and then entrenched that systemically? Is that what happened? Or was it in the early 2015s when we elected this idiot again after this stuff came out? Right? Is that when we decided to be really super racist against blacks? I'm just not sure. And if somebody could help me, that would be really appreciated. Okay, so Bardish Shagger says that. Here's what Justin Trudeau says.
United States with shock and with horror. Anti-black racism is real. It's in the United States, but it's also in Canada. And we know people are facing systemic discrimination, unconscious bias, and anti-black racism every single day.
Okay, I wanted to show some examples of this is the bigotry of low expectations. And so if you're saying everybody's racist and implying that it's like these other Canadians that are racist that you need to call out, like here is what people think in the United States, admittedly, about voter ID laws. So these are white liberals, presumably, I think, who are trying to save black people, but their pre-expectations, their ideas of black people are very, very racist. And then this guy, and we're going to watch this for about 50 seconds, and then this guy goes to a black neighborhood and says, this is what white people think of you. Is this true? And he just asks, like, do you have ID? Can you find the DMV? And it's devastating. So here we go. And then I'm going to show you the bias here and the idea that our leaders all think that this is an appropriate response to riots in the United States. That's what's happening. This is incredible, okay? This is incredible. So bigotry of low expectations, here we go.
Do you think it suppresses the African-American vote?
Definitely.
Tell us how.
Because they're less likely to have state IDs.
Minority voters are less likely to have the kinds of IDs that have been described or required.
These type of people.
Isn't that guy so smarmy? Oh, just smarmy sound. Okay, back to but smarmy and like self-assured, just the worst kind of liberal. Anyway, back to this.
People don't live in areas with easy access to DMVs or other places where they can get identification.
You can always get IDs you do over the internet. Does that also make it difficult for black people in particular?
Yeah, you have to have access to the internet. You have to be able to pay an internet service provider for certain fees.
Do you think that's harder for black people to go online?
Well, I feel like they don't have the knowledge of how it works.
A lot of people have smartphones, but you might not have data.
For most of the communities, they don't really know what is out there just because they're not aware or they're not informed.
I also think there's a repression of black voting with how if you're a convicted felon, you're not allowed to vote and everything. And when you look at swing states like Florida, that's a huge population of the African Americans.
Now I'm here in East Harlem to ask black people their thoughts on what you just heard. Do you have ID normally? Do you carry ID around?
Yes, I have state ID.
Do you carry ID?
Yes, I do.
Do you know any black person who doesn't carry ID?
No. Everyone that I know has an ID. Why would they think we don't have ID?
That's a lie. Why would they say that?
Do you have ID?
Yes.
Because I have my ID and my friends have their ID, so we know what we need to carry around.
Everybody that I know have ID. Like That's one of the things you need to walk around with New York with, an ID.
Do you know any black adult who does not have ID?
No, I don't.
Is it a weird thing to even say that?
Yes, it is.
What is this, some type of trick candy cameras?
I know, right? That's the only thing I brought with me.
Those are legit IDs.
I like that he's like getting the IDs out. Like, can I just see your ID? And they pull the ID out. Like, what are you talking about? It's so arrogant, right? It's so like, we're gonna help them because we know that they need our help. So we're gonna help them by changing all of these things to what ends? Like, to what means? We're gonna help them do what? Right? Like, it seems like right? I mean, I just think that it's so arrogant of people to assume that other people can't help themselves so much that they need to intervene. And now to our Liberal cabinet ministers. Bill Blair says, anti-black racism is abhorrent and unlawful. We cannot remain silent. That's Bill Blair, just to make sure you're clear. We must acknowledge the lived experience of our fellow Canadians and work together to end this injustice. Now is the time to unite and to act. What injustice is he talking about exactly? Which one? What was his name? George Floyd? Is that his name? Yeah, George Floyd. Is that the injustice you're talking about, Mr. Blair? I don't understand. Which one exactly, specifically? Here's Ahmed Hassan. He's saying, we will only overcome anti-black racism by first acknowledging that it exists. Thank you, Massey. I think that's how you say it, Masai, for the conversation today. I'm not going to read it. A lot of them cite that same article. Mr. Hassan again says, anti-black racism does not stop at the border. I've heard from people who have said that we should not worry about what is happening in the U.S. because that's not our problem. As a black man and a father of 3 young boys, I can tell you it's a lived reality for black Canadians. Racism and hatred have consequences. We must continue to call out hate and injustice and to look inward to see the impact of systemic discrimination and anti-black racism in our country. I continue to ask all Canadians to step up, raise your voices, and ensure that real inclusion accompanies the diversity of our country. Government alone can't change the system, but we continue to work hard. We also need Canadians to look around, speak up with their friends and families. That's the second time he asks you to raise your voice and speak up. Check the unconscious bias around and within you. Only then can our children walk into a grocery store. Sorry, I just want to remind everybody halfway through this, right? Like, this guy's the leader of this party. Like, what kind of absolute BS is this guy spinning, Mr. Hassan? Like, seriously, unconscious bias around you? You have voted to keep that man as your leader. You haven't brought up any kind of stink about that. You have zero moral authority to talk down to Canadians, sir. Get real. Back to this. Only then can our children walk into the grocery store without being followed, can jog around the block without fear, can enjoy watching birds or going for a bike ride, can walk past people without them holding their purse closely as if it were going to be stolen. We have to, and we must continue to have difficult conversations and speak up so that we don't lose another innocent black life. Well, I mean, maybe the first action should be calling for a leadership review. And then you should play this and say, hey, Justin, right? This kind of undermines our credibility for the whole racism push we're all saying this weekend. Can you maybe help us understand a bit better? How many times did you wear blackface? Morons. Okay, back to this. Catherine McKenna. Catherine McKenna says, right now, thousands, if not millions, are marching, fighting, and protesting for their basic human rights. We need to acknowledge that racism and discrimination are part of our reality here in Canada and around the world, and we need to call it out. We have to do better. Again, somebody else is showing the blackface. This is the Deo picture. But those weren't protests. Like, that's not protesting. That's rioting. And using that to push you're all racist and we need to do better and call people out. Call people out. There we go. There's another one. Call it out. Is inappropriate. It's not appropriate at all. You know what? In fact, get your own house in order and maybe do a leadership review because your leader hasn't left his cottage in a couple of months, and that's concerning. Back to this one. George Fergus says, racism kills, racism maims, racism crushes families and communities. Actually, I think that's the rioters. I don't think the racism did that. I think that's the rioters. And I think that they're overreacting because, the officers were charged and fired. There's evidence that the man died of not of asphyxiation, but of a heart disorder. I've heard that in places. I don't have a link for that, so that's not confirmed. But still, there's lots of too many questions to say, man, we've all got to get in line on this, right? It is not about cruelty to dogs, mental health, or traffic violations. We can no longer ignore racism. But that rioting in Montreal, that looting in Montreal, just Ignore that, right? Oh, where is it? That one. Ignore the rioting in Montreal, right? It's just, I don't know. When the leadership of the country is focused on this, and the country itself is rioting because another country is rioting, it stinks. It stinks to high heaven. Racism kills? Come on. Racism maims? Racism crushes families and communities? Rhetoric, appealing to your emotions. And not true. Marco Mendocino, to overcome racism, we need to be more than merely good. We must raise our voices. There's another one. Raise our voices. This is a quote from Masai. I don't know if that's how you say it. I'm saying it wrong probably. I don't care. I'm not even going to look specifically. I'm just in a hurry. That's why I don't care. Sorry. Some timely wisdom and perspective from the coach of the Raptors. I believe that's who he is anyway. I don't watch basketball. That's why I don't know how to say his name. But like, this is a lazy tweet to get in line with, like, they've been told, right? They've been told to tweet something out, and tweeting this one with, sorry that the Liberal cabinet themselves are obviously clearly racist still, right? But you're also racist because obviously we need to say that because they've been told by their whip or whoever. Somebody's orchestrated these tweets, and they're tone deaf, and they don't hit the reality of the Canadian experience currently. And I feel like we deserve much better leadership. I don't feel like our leadership is at all representing the country, not in a way that we should be represented, not during normal times, and certainly not during the emergency times that they keep telling us we're in, these unprecedented times that call for all sorts of sacrifice. And like, their sacrifice is working 4 days a week, or 4 days over the summer, and having a committee meet 4 days a week. I don't see it. I don't see the hard working. I'm not sure why I don't see it. Oh, right. Because they're getting their R&R out on the water, but they can't social distance in the House of Commons. Nope. Something is absolutely wrong. And our leadership has abdicated responsibility when their response is racism is the biggest problem, the same day virtually as Donald Trump is correctly painting the organization, the Antifa organization, as terrorists. So, I mean, there's an example of leadership that I wish somebody in Canada was displaying. But right now, the Liberals and the NDP are coordinating to shut down Parliament until September. So, I mean, have fun. This is it. This is what Canada's going to look like for the foreseeable future, right? With slightly opening up every little bit until, I don't know, back to normal in September, I guess. I'm not sure. We'll see. I'll keep watching. Thank you for watching. Check out CanadaPoly.com. Check out SpeakingMoistly.co. Check out CanadaReport.co. And have a wonderful, wonderful